I just watched Beavis and Butthead do the universe. Okay, seriously, I'm not going to do that throughout the entire review, I promise. Beavis and Butthead. Is there anything more quintessentially 90s? Off the top of my head, the only other thing I can think of for sure is maybe Primus, but that's about it. Let's just cut to the chase, shall we? Beavis and Butthead, undisputedly, is a product of its time. I don't think you could make Beavis and Butthead work in 2022, just like rebooting it and then just slapping it here and say, hey, these characters live in 2022 now. And I know this for a fact, not because everybody is so uptight and politically correct. I mean, part of that is probably the reason why, but more importantly, I know this for a fact because we already tried this in 2011, and it didn't work in 2011 either. I do admit I got excited when I heard Beavis and Butthead was coming back in 2011, largely because back then I didn't know any better and reboots weren't as a big thing of dread back then, but all the same, I was looking forward to it. And then when it finally came on the air, I admit I enjoyed it in the short term, but the more I thought about it, the more I kind of realized this show doesn't really work anymore. And a lot of it is because the characters of Beavis and Butthead can't really exist in the 2010s. To borrow a quote of sorts from the ever-polarizing movie Bob, characters like this would not be vegetating on their couch watching music videos. They'd be hanging out in their mom's basement watching Pornhub. It's the kind of dynamic we have nowadays. It's just the way it works now. But then we found out about Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. And when I heard the premise for this movie, I have to admit, if you have to do Beavis and Butthead in the modern day, this is probably a better way to go about it. I mean, yeah, the whole thing where Beavis and Butthead go on a mission with NASA and go through a wormhole and then find themselves in 2022 that way, it does require a degree of suspension of disbelief since Beavis and Butthead is generally grounded in reality, save for maybe certain aspects of cartoon violence. But, you know, suspension of disbelief isn't always a bad thing, you know? Just shut up and enjoy the ride. You get a lot of the usual jokes you probably would expect from Beavis and Butthead, you know? Like they see 2022 on a calendar but spend too much time focusing on the 69th annual barbecue, and it's like, 69, And there's a lot of humor that you may or may not expect, like Beavis and Butthead having no idea how an iPhone works, or Beavis and Butthead thinking that the girl they're trying to hook up with in the 1990s is in the phone that they're working with in the 2020s. You have the typical beat where the two friends get mad at each other and then try to go their separate ways, but then reunite and realize they belong together as friends, and there's probably somebody writing slash fiction on the internet, but what are you gonna do? The one thing that I did notice is Beavis and Butthead themselves, like, you can kind of tell it's been years since Mike Judge has had to do the voices for Beavis and Butthead, and Beavis doesn't quite sound like Beavis, and Butthead doesn't quite sound like Butthead, but they still sound close enough. You know, it's like the same problem that Yakko had in the Animaniacs reboot the other year, where, like, Dot still sounds like Dot, Wacko still sounds like Wacko, but Yakko sounds like Rob Paulson doing a Yakko impression. And that's kind of how it felt with Beavis and Butthead, where it kind of felt like somebody doing a Beavis and Butthead impression. But aside from that, it wasn't the worst attempt at a reboot I've ever seen. Is there actually going to be a series that follows this movie? Hell if I know. If there is, I was kind of hoping it would be that look into the future where we would see like Beavis and Butthead in their 30s or their 40s or whatever. That would actually be kind of an interesting look into the future, you know? And we get that in Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe, albeit for like 3-4 seconds. And of course, because the multiverse is a really popular subject right now, we have to get a bit of a glimpse into the multiverse and see smart Beavis and smart Butthead, although it is kind of hilarious to see smart Beavis and smart Butthead. I genuinely thought those two are going to be like space aliens who abducted Beavis and Butthead based on the previews, but I actually like this idea better. To make a long story short, this is basically a fan service kind of movie to me. If you like Beavis and Butthead, you're gonna probably get something out of it. If you hate Beavis and Butthead, this movie is probably not gonna change your mind. If you've never heard of Beavis and Butthead, maybe give it a watch. I don't know. Somebody who likes Beavis and Butthead, I might show maybe just an iota of favoritism here, but I actually didn't hate this movie. I liked it. It was pretty much what I expected a Beavis and Butthead movie to be, so 3 hats out of 4.